Hey there everyone, Spazzy Dragon here, aka Syndromes, and welcome to the Ask an Admin live stream. I'm really sorry that I haven't really been uploading a lot of things lately, and that is to be expected. My overall free time has gotten a fair bit smaller than usual. But, well, here I am. Alright then everyone, before we start the stream I want to lay out a few ground rules and as well as explain a couple of things that we are going to be doing. First of all, regarding the questions, they can be some very trivial ones and harder ones, but keep in mind with the later being that these might be some questions that I will not physically be able to answer individually because of the lack of knowledge, or that, you know, it would actually require me to look into things a lot more to give you an answer. And secondly, some of these things I will not be able to tell you due to admin obligations. So in other words, there are going to be answers that I can give you, and there are also going to be questions that you can give me, but I cannot answer due to either, you know, not being able to answer on the spot, because trying to live answer on the live stream when it comes to difficult questions is very problematic, because it doesn't give you a lot of time to, you know, pull up relevant resources and whatever, as well as consult the other admin staffs. And secondly, there are just questions that are not allowed to answer. So hopefully you will understand that. Right. So, since this is a live stream, I'm obviously in-game. I'm on a untagged admin character, and the first thing I want to quickly tell you that I'm going to be doing, like, admin-y things, you know, being myself around and shit, but do not message this character, and no questions sent to this character are going to be replied to, and obviously, you know, it's really just here for the sake of recording something over the live stream itself. And apart from that, let's start. Just start writing up the questions you want me to answer. Obviously, I'm not going to acknowledge all of them because, you know, there might be a lot or might not be a lot, but there you go. Also, please don't spam the channel if you can. We have a moderator present and they are going to be very generous with handing out mutes, so something to keep in mind. Anyway, I'm going to quickly go and grab myself a cup of water because I'm going to be talking a lot, and while I do, start giving me the first questions you want me to answer. With that in mind, I'll be right back.
What's good? What you need, nigga?
You got them greens?
Man, you know I got that loud, nigga. What you want?
Word, word.
I mean, what up?
How much is gonna cost?
I mean, a gram is 50, nigga. What you need?
Alright, I'm back, and yeah,
Nigga,
all you need to do is just throw me a question and, you know, formulate it as much as possible. Don't ask, like, single line questions and shit.
What you talking about?
Nigga, take your ass down to Plateau, say.
Don't raise your voice.
Nigga, I'll raise my voice whenever I want, nigga. You want this green or that brown, nigga?
Yeah, I understand that.
Right, so the first one is from Imby. Spazzy, do you think that the idea of green statements is a problem because over the years they get buried and even the current admins forget that they exist? It's not so much that the current team forget that they exist, although yes, that is also a point. Actually, the biggest problem is that these statements are often given by individuals because a individual admin is given enough trust that their statements, you know, represent the whole of the team. Which, by the way, why answering questions on live stream is going to be kind of problematic, and I will obviously need to be very conservative with these. The problem was actually not so much that they forget about it, but the opinion of the team changes over time as new members come and go. So some things that make sense about 2 years ago, and obviously there is a green statement there somewhere about it. You know, these days we have completely different opinions, so it's not really that much that they get buried, it's just that they become outdated really fast. Quite frankly, yes, there is currently a thread somewhere regarding all the pinned statements, and even those, if you take a look at them, some of them don't really make sense these days. So, you know, it's a completely different issue at this point. But yes, it is a problem, but, you know, comparing them to some of the bigger problems, you know, they're kind of lower on the priority list. Okay, the second question from Pal Powers. Why was Liz restored and not removed? If you mean the current one, it was actually a bug that we noticed during the destruction of that GMG station in Sigma 19, which I don't remember. We noticed this bug that something's really wrong with the way that the plugin calculates the damage absorption shoot a base, and we already took notice of that, and you know, by the time that we thought we would fix it, Liz got attacked, and even though it had all of the necessary commodities on it to quite easily withstand what it was being thrown at it at a time, it still not only took damage, but it took damage in a really, really odd way that in the end we just went there, me and Ali, we just sat there and went like, we probably need to pull this off, like pull this plugin off until more situation like this happens, because we understand that organizing a large amount of siege, like, you know, a large siege like this, especially when it comes to New York, is very problematic. And we thought that, well, considering the holidays are coming anyway, we might as well, you know, pull down the plugin now and try to fix it, rather than to wait until, you know, something else sieges or happens, because this is a huge drama magnet and we just don't want people to, you know, have that sort of drama and worry about such things over the holidays and the upcoming New Year. So, at this point, that's pretty much it. If you want details, you probably need to ask Ali on the forums at this point. But that was the overall gist behind it. That's why it was just removed. It's probably going to get restored because, again, we did check what was on the base at the time, and considering the intended way the plugin should have worked, it should not have gotten any damage considering what was being thrown at it at the time, because we were there, by the way. So, that's that. Okay, Impact Whisper. Okay, my question is this: why aren't the admins adding in any new AI ships? Community members have made some amazing looking designs that fit roleplay, but they aren't being added. This is a really interesting topic because we actually have no saying of what kind of ships get added to the game. The only saying that the admins have regarding equipment or ships is that if we just see that, yeah, this is really going to cause issues, and usually this is when we have access to some sort of information that the development team and the balancing don't have at the time due to, you know, us being admins and them not being admins, and such moments are really rare, so, you know, it's not really us who add ships, so that kind of question would be mostly directed to the development team at the time. I'm not trying to pile that on them, but, you know, there's things that we physically implement, we have to implement ourselves, and there are things that the devs do. So when it comes to implementing new ships and new ship lines, it's really just up to the devs at that point. Personally, I don't know what's going on with the AI ships, because quite frankly, I never really enjoyed AI ships. I really don't have any interest in AI, so well, there you go. Especially, do you know anything about the plans for the gameplay update coming sometimes? Really depends. Oop. Screw you. Really depends on what you mean by update, gameplay update, because apart from ship rebalances and actually, if you haven't noticed, the balance devs are actually really active these days, so, you know, these sort of changes are going to be really interesting to watch. But apart from those, I'm not really sure what you mean. If you can specify what you mean by that, that would be nice. The only... Oh no, not even that. Yeah, you would have to specify what you meant by that. Oh, this one's kind of interesting. Spazzy, how much crap do you have to go through in the report section from day to day on average? I suppose there's no real harm actually telling you, but depending on what is going on, obviously when it comes to large sieges, there's always going to be a fair amount of reports, large fights going on in certain systems, then there's going to be a lot of reports usually in regards of who gave what little amount of roleplay or, you know, stuff like that, but I would say it's an average about 2 to 3. But I suppose the only problem is that it doesn't matter how small the report is, the overall amount of effort you have to go into researching it. You know, going on, checking the logs, checking who is the reported player, who, you know, on the forums, trying to get the contacts, especially if the report itself is kind of poorly structured. It doesn't matter how, you know, how important, how big of a deal that report is. It can be very trivial, but the amount of time you, as an admin, actually have to go into processing that sanction is pretty much one of the same. Which Hannibal, is that you? But yeah. Stop. And I can't concentrate. So, about the update to the previous question, about the gameplay update thing, specifically the cruise disruptor affecting cloaks and the mission renovation thread. Hello. Regarding the cruise, the cloaks, I'm not exactly sure what to do with the cloaks at this point, because the cloaks were changed just now, and we kind of need to wait until we see what happens. You know, small changes in increments are probably better than just changing everything at once, so that's something to keep in mind. In a perfect world, we're trying to, as admins, not interfere with development team in terms of, you know, specific changes like this. If they think that it would be a good idea to remove CDs affecting cloaks, then it's probably going to be up to them. And I suppose the only problem with that is that, you know, cloak disruptors in general are not really that widespread. You'd probably need to have cloak disruptors placed on, say, the internal compartment. Ow, that was my microphone. In the equipment type somewhere maybe, so it doesn't, you know. Hello, Allie. Alright, another one from MP. Spazzy, we see the term metagaming thrown around a lot, mostly regarding the usage of the player list, but the actual definition of metagaming for the rules suggests use of players... what? The actual definition of metagaming for the rules suggests use of the player list is okay. Okay. It's been one of the What? What, Allie? Need bigger. Yes, of course we do. Here you go. All the big fish. Are these fishes big enough for you? It's gonna be okay. It's clearly gonna be okay. So yeah, about the player list and metagaming, it's one of those things that we really don't have an answer to. I mean, the problem with this is that, oh hey, that's kind of a thing. It just exists, and there's no way that you can prove in which moments metagaming is done by a player and which not. I mean, if a player is just moving around and, oh, hello. Yeah, good for you. If a player is just moving around... Oh, for fuck's sake! Yeah, by the way, you're gonna probably see this thing in one of the next events. Just so you know. It's going to tear your face off with its thingy. There's no way this is gonna be bad. I think the NPCs are actually confused. I don't think NPCs are meant to attack something this big. Oh no, they actually are shooting them. But their Novas aren't doing anything. Right. But yeah, the player list has always been a touchy subject, so I really don't think it's worth wasting the time on the stream to try and figure out around it. Spazzy, a question about your scientific data rewards events. Are we going to see more of those, and if so, when? When it comes to the scientific data, currently they are being dropped by NPCs and bases that you find around in the game map that provides, you know, fun things for explorers to do. But considering we currently disabled the plugin, so there's no bases, and when it comes to the NPCs, I'm currently waiting for the next patch to fix some of the problems with the NPCs that are actually dropping them. So, you know, there you go. Stay tuned on that. Oh yeah, and the reason why only specific NPCs currently drop them is because, due to what these this data is used for, we cannot have a completely uncontrolled supply. It has to be regulated by an admin, so, you know, as soon as I start feeling that, hey, we need more of these, then, you know, we're gonna start making more of these. If anything, no one has yet come to me to claim one of those things, although, funnily enough, you should be able to get some more goodies, especially for the Tier 1 rewards, and as you know, as a part of the next small update patch. So, hopefully you're gonna be, you know, pleased to see what what is being added, so, yeah. That. Question, what are the possible ways to gain a positive exposure for Discovery in order to attract new and old players? A mass email regarding a Discovery newsletter has been considered, although it is currently being rather stalled because, you know, there's a lot of things to do, and until we have greened all of the new admins and given them a crash course, there's just a lot of things that need to be focused on instead. But apart from that, fixing the community and making it a little bit more newbie-friendly would be one thing, and the second is probably to admit that, you know, the people who would probably be most interested in this game in terms of roleplay, they'll probably stick to the forums, if at all, because the endgame is still just a glorified, you know, glorified space-themed chat room with some roleplay. So, yeah. Alright, so the next one. There's been lots of drama over POBs recently, specifically the fact that the sieges have literally no risk, but making a POB is an externally risky thing to do. What's your plans about it? Lots. There's been a huge amount of discussion of what can be done, what should be done, considering the current technical limitations out of anything. But, quite frankly, currently there's really one kind of interesting thing to do, and that is that a POB siege would require a event, and attackers would need to put a considerable amount of effort in terms of preparation and resources in terms of money, cargo, and etc. to actually start a event to siege a base. So that's one of the ways to do it, but the only problem is that it again involves adminship, which means that sometimes things might get delayed, and we kind of want people to, you know, if you can do something without the admins having to involve themselves, please do that. Oh, and I suppose this is that moment where just all right, Hannibal. All right, yeah, okay, this is cute. So, Kelmer is asking, what's your plan on future events? Lots. There is a Google Doc worth of 60 pages of certain types of events that can be done and have been done. In terms of types of events, as soon as we get some of the next patches in... Ramby. As soon as we get some of the newer patches in, then you will see some more interesting things to acquire during these events, so hopefully that's going to be funny. The only problem is that the most easy events to do currently are trade events, and which is really nice and all, considering you know you get some money out of it, but currently you don't really have a lot of places to put that money into. Yes, there is a huge fucking phallus coming right at me. Help. Help. The phallus is distracting. But yeah, huge amounts of ideas, plus the ones that have been submitted by official factions, for example the Tower 44 event, that's gonna be probably next at this point. As you probably noticed, for example, the latest one in Omicron Delta is in fact a trade event, but at the same time it's not really that big of a buff. The current amount of money you make off of it is somewhere between between ores and smuggling, so, you know, it's within reason, but it's also allowing me to run it a little bit for longer than, you know, a couple of days. Ideally, the idea is that people generate their own events by using commodities such as jump hole generators, NEM bombs, and other things. But regular PvE events is also going to be happening as soon as we get that new patch in that fixes a lot of the issues with NPCs. So that's that. The ID rewrite has been started and talked about for at least 2 years now, when, if at all, it is coming. I would be very optimistic if I said it is actually coming as soon as we, you know, get the new administrator guys up and running. It means that, you know, while they're handling stuff like sanction reports and everything else, the other people can actually focus their efforts on something else. The ID rewrite is actually something that is also... Oh, there it is. That is also coming, but the problem is that it is a huge amount of work, especially when it comes to, as you already pointed out, it has been coming for 2 years, so everything is outdated, especially when it comes to Zone of Influence, because of the de-guarding and the new systems popping up, the systems changing, new bases being added, and then, you know, automatically the ID's Zone of Influence gets changed a little bit if it gets added into a system where it, you know, didn't have one usually. So it's there, it's saved, it's probably gonna be made public. Actually, it's not even a probably, it's most definitely is gonna be made public before we actually implement it, because, you know, again, getting some feedback on things, why did you do this, is a very good idea. Yeah. Is there any consideration of opening up an event manager position for people to organize events with limited power? That was basically my kind of goal when I applied for the adminship. I really wanted to be an event organizer and event creator, but I was pretty much told that, hey, you need to be an admin for that, so here I am. As soon as we get more admins to do regular admin things, I'm gonna be, you know, focusing a lot more on it, because, you know, there's a bit of a backlog already when it comes to community-submitted events, so, you know, I want to be the event guy. Do you have any plans regarding money sinks? Would you like to share some teasers? A lot. A lot of ideas, but most of them need to be yet coded and yet added, so, you know, stay tuned. I'd rather not promise you or tease you with anything, because, you know, that can backfire really fast. Do you even play as a normal player anymore, or just super busy with being administrator and doing events? So here's the deal. Back when, like, a couple of years back, when I didn't really have a lot of, you know, any idea of how adminning works or whatever, I would usually go like, haha, why do the admins don't even play the fucking game, how can they admin everything? I kind of see why this happened, and that's basically, imagine you do have a day job, or you go to school or whatever, and when you come home, you do some stuff. You know, you either play some games, sometimes it might be disco or whatever. For us, it's more like there's always a huge backlog of things that need to be done, so the moment you get home, you end up just booting up your admin forums and just checking down the list of what needs to be done. And by the way, you know, by the time that's done with, and it's over, you just look at the you know, you look at the discovery shortcut, and it's like, I probably have enough disco for one day. You know, it's that sort of thing. It's not healthy. It's really not healthy, but at this point there's such a backlog that, you know, when you log into the game, you kind of keep telling yourself, you know, if I have the free time to blow up this trader, you probably have free time to start implementing some of those ID changes and whatever, you know, whatever is on the agenda for that day. But, yeah. Comes with the territory, sadly. But if anything, I kind of see why we went through a lot of admin, so, So, in regards to that last question, good question. I guess you don't have any free time to continue the adventures of Victorizi and Greasy Stan. Yup. Sadly, there's just not enough time for that anymore. Here's a really important question. We see lots of players come and go for varying reasons: high skill gap, the drama in the community, the high expectations of roleplay, etc. Do you have any sorry, but the chat is kind of odd, like the chat window is kind of... Do you have any plans to make the game more open for casual players, and furthermore, do you want any sort of publicity to attract the new players besides spread the word? It really depends, guys. You do understand that if we make this video, if we make the community very, very much aware, and if we get very many new players in, the overall quality of the roleplay is probably gonna drop, because the average person just doesn't know how to roleplay. So here's the question for you, the community members from us admins. Do you want us to make sure that you have a lot of players to play with and populate the server at the expense of the overall amount of people to roleplay, or do you want to target discovery at roleplay communities specifically, but then you have to deal with the fact that there's probably not going to be a lot of players involved? The problem why... I mean, I brought a fair amount of players, you know, personal friends to Discover Freelancer. They pretty much left for the same reason. The roleplay is subpar from what you expect from a roleplay site, and that has, one of the problems with that is the amount of, you know, the limitations that you have in game when it comes to roleplay. You know, it's fun, it's you know, it's good for what it is. But this is not a multi-paragraph forum thing that is going on in games, so it's a pseudo roleplay. So basically, you know, players who just want to play the game, they're going to be turned off by the fact that they have to basically imagine things, which for them seems very silly. And when it comes to die-hard roleplayers, well, you know, what we are currently offering them is kind of subpar, so that's something you just need to keep in mind. When, not sure if this question has already been here, but when do you finally see an answer for the official DOM requests? Anything that is currently related to official factions has been frozen because during one moment in the last month we basically only had 3 active admins. The 3 is the minimum vote that you can get on these things, but when there's only 3 active admins, you can be rest assured that this vote is not going to be very, you know, very unique. It's not going to be based... You know, voting for the sake of voting is probably a really bad idea, so we basically put everything on the shelf for now. We're going to get all of the new admins in, and after that, then those votes were actually going to be diverse enough and coming from enough players to actually normally process. Because otherwise, we're basically what I'm saying, we're kind of afraid to process things that require minimum 3 people to vote when there's only 3 people to vote. So, you know, it's kind of problematic. And there are things that regular moderators can't vote on.
Shadia, you were on the receiving end of one of the most talked about uppercuts. What did that feel like?
I was on Mortal Kombat. It just hurted. Like, it was like a finish him. You know what I'm saying?
MP is asking, was the recent rule-ish rework that changed the rule where transports must be made a demand before being shot into only needing a demand made by pirates intentional? This makes it so the lawfuls can engage in lawfuls in their zone of influence pretty much freely, and intel factions can do it serious-wide. Yeah, this is one of those questions that I have no idea how to answer alone. So you know, it's I actually have to go back and see what the exact changes are, when they happened, and who made them. So feel free to plump it on the forums so we don't forget about it. Because a lot, you know, it's one of those moments where the desk is so cluttered with, you know, piles of paperwork. If you add something just falls off the side again, and you know, we need a. It's a bit of a paper management issue that we're currently having, but you know, hopefully that's going to get fixed soon.
Identifying the driver, he was immediately suspended and removed from duty. His behavior is absolutely
Anything like power? Here's a question. Anything like power core upgrades planned to be added in the future? You can actually do that right now with the scientific data research, but you will have to actually put some effort into it in terms of roleplay. It's basically an SRP on demand.
That's why I want to talk to Malay. I really want to.
And you know, the only reason why it's currently running for only 2 months, you know, when you actually do it, is because in the rare case where this is a problem, you know, it turns out to be a huge balance issue, then at least it is going to be removed from this from the game environment at some point, just as a part of the mechanic. So it's a bit of a failsafe. The only reason why they're actually, you know, not permanent is more or less a failsafe until we're sure that there are changes that we can implement to specific players and there are changes that we can't. Needless to say, the balance team aren't really really happy with this idea of giving ships some more powerful power cores, even if they're only temporarily. But again, you know, we'll just see what happens. Currently, we only have tier 1 rewards unlocked anyway, so you know, there's still a chance that everything's gonna be okay. But there's also still a chance that everything's gonna be shit, and then you know the whole thing gets Okay, recently you wrote that the staff is trying to be precise and strict when it comes to enforcing rules, but there are so many incidents where situations are in black and white. What about those gray lines? I think you're meaning the ones that happen in-game, and well, that's the problem. That's also a reason why many of us don't log our tagged admin characters. Being on the spot in-game and helping, you know, somehow unravel situations in-game is technically a good idea, but the only problem is that when you're actually processing a sanction that has been submitted in the forum, you actually have to go into the server, you have to dig up the logs, you have to check who was involved and double check and everything. It means that you're spending a pretty huge amount of work and you're spending a huge amount of time in order to make sure that you don't do issues. Yeah, you know, you don't fuck up. And even then, when you present all of the evidence as a reply in the sanction thread, the rest of the team also goes over it and makes sure that you interpreted it, you know, correctly. So that's the part of sanction processing. Sanction processing in real time, being in the spot, is very, very risky, and that's why you don't see a lot of players, a lot of admins logging their admin tag ships, because it's so very easy to misinterpret something and basically blab someone who's basically innocent. Or, you know, overreact, problems like that. You know, it's better safe and sorry to do it later, when you have actually time to review everything, but in-game it's kind of risky. Here's a question. I see that official factions have a lot of rights. What are the responsibilities of official factions? Oh, well, this is a really tricky subject because, quite frankly, for the amount of stuff they have to do, the amount of stuff to do, you know, doing. Did you just put the... Oh, you put the Suncrusher engine on a regular. Sigh. Well, aren't you an amazing sparkle bud? But yeah, rights and responsibilities for official factions. If official factions were ran by a group of people, then we could actually talk about it, but currently official factions are really much just ran by one person per faction, maybe a high cancel or something. There have to be some problems. There's always some problems with it. Responsibilities of official faction in my individual thoughts would be that, hey, you have chosen to lead and involve your NPC faction, your ID, you might as well do something about it. But in most cases, the faction leaders pretty much have stated that they want to make the game fun for their members, and they're going to be focusing on that, even though that it doesn't really benefit the ID itself. Which is understandable, but, well, there we go. Considering planned changes in PoB mechanics, have the admin team considered how disproportionate the hardship difficulty level of maintaining attacking PoBs is for the unlawfuls in comparison to lawfuls? Yes, we have, and which is why it still hasn't been there are so many fucking variations at this point that just instantly changing a mechanic that has been working so far, it's very problematic. It's probably not worth the risk until we are 100% sure that we know what we're doing at that point. Because, you know, if your base dies with all the stuff on it, just because it was during a trial period of the new functionality of the plugin, well, it's really, you know, not that much that we can say, yeah, it's okay, we reverted it, but, you know, you still lost your base, so, again, we know, we keep that in mind, which is, again, why this is a pretty tricky subject at this point. Question, why do the obvious problem players not get whacked permanently, but instead they are allowed back, and even if their report pages run into 5 or 6 pages already? Which ones do you mean? Because every single one is a bit of a individual thing. Can't really process every single player as a whole, unless there's no chance, unless there's, you want to whack a few people at once, but even so, every single one is looked at individually, so have to be a bit more specific with that question. Regarding roleplay and new players, are there any plans to convey Discovery lore in a better way in-game in the form of info cards, bar rumors, and book commodities? Yeah, sure, if, you know, someone's willing to make them. I see no problem why they wouldn't be implemented, but, you know, again, it kind of requires someone to make this thing, but... Why didn't Discovery with its shrinking player base switch to a representative model of managing server matters instead of overworked admins? Without going into too much detail, which I physically cannot tell you, it has to do with the information you are given access to as a admin regarding the players that you're managing. It is easier to kind of burden a certain amount of players with this task instead of the potential fallout and even in real life repercussions that might happen if this was given to a more of a consulate sort of thing, if that's what you mean. Could you tell us what is possible to SRP? Like most people, just SRP their capitals to play them on their other IDs, but can you give examples of what else is possible? Like, could you SRP a station? Basically, overall, the idea is you can SRP pretty much everything within reason as long as it doesn't fuck the game for other players. So, the sky's the limit within reason. Because every single time an SRP is given to us, it's even worse than having to do sanction reports, because you have about 10 to 15 links of individual roleplays and comms and stuff, and you pretty much just need to sit down, buckle up, get some coffee, and read through everything in order to properly assess the situation. So, you know. And pretty much if it is somehow connected to PvP, for example terrorist IDs or whatever, chances are we're not going to let that fly anyway. So there's something you shouldn't be bothering to, you know, do, but there you go. What are the standards and expectations of a person who is applying for staff to get accepted? Well, this question probably, the answer to this question probably changes from season to season, so to speak. Adminship is not fun. It is not fun. There's probably no better way to stop playing the game and start hating the community than to becoming an admin. Because, you know, you might have your inner thinking of how things work in Disco and, you know, which side are the shitters, which side aren't the shitters. But then you have us who basically have to deal with this every single day for, you know, months, and we actually see what is going on. There's so many stories I could tell you if I could tell you, where I'm just reading the sanction or reading the log, whatever, and just this community is just hey, I'm still here, and so are a lot of us, and so will a new section of admins. So, you know, we're trying our best, guys. How many interested players are denied access to the server today? What's the estimated impact? That is a question I cannot tell you. Well, one, I don't know, because I would have to pull up the statistics for that, and I don't really have the time to do that in real time over stream, so. Would NBC patrols be given change to be given better loot drops in certain zones or systems? Yes, but there's no way to make, at least currently, to make NBC spawns not be decreased along with all the other spawns when the server is under higher load. At some point I'm probably going to be talking about the Cult of Technology NBCs and how they fit it into the game environment, and why they actually exist in the first place when it comes to PvE events, and I'm going to explain why this is such a big issue, why NBCs in general is a big issue in Discovery right now. It has to do with the server load and the player load. Spazzy, do you think there's any point to Kasari Exiles now? How would you suggest getting activity in Kasari and Gallia? Oh, you know, quite frankly, and I suppose this should be of no surprise, but I don't really follow the events of Kasari much. I'm really not really sure. I have read the TLDR version of what exactly is happening in Kasari in terms of the Civil War and the Kasarian exiles and the Old Navy and the New Navy and everything. But this is interesting for a very specific group of people who actually liked to do Kasari things in the first place, and, well, sadly we don't really have many of them. As far as Gallia goes, there's many ways to do this, but it has to go through the official factions and whether or not they want to do something like this. The problem is, there are many things how you could fix this, or at least, you know, nudge it a little bit, but if it backfires, no one wants to take the blame for it, which is why it just stagnates at this point. There are plans to implement systems that represent specific limitations for what can and cannot enter it. For example, a system where intense radiation that only caps can enter without dying horribly. There's a couple of ideas for event-specific systems, as well as the introduction of a very specific mining commodity that can only be found in these systems, and only when these systems are found, quote, spawned. So yeah, there are ideas, but again, we wait for the next patch. Shizun says, Spazzy, I sent you a PM on the forums about a Kasari-based event. What was your thought on it, and did you read it? There's about 15 PMs on the forum currently that are still sitting in my inbox, because when I sit down at the inbox and start going through that, I probably will need to contribute a few hours of my time, so, you know. I will do that, but, you know, Saturday and Sunday is my time, so. Spazzy, how are IDs generally made in terms of what they can do in Zone of Influence? Is your goal with these to make them balanced, or to accurately portray what the faction itself actually does or should do? Quite frankly, at this point, I'm kind of wanting to, you know, review the whole ID rework and then just plonk it down on the forum and see what others think about it, and whether or not it's actually worth implementing in the first place. Are the amount of changes and, you know, is the amount of effort that needs to go into these changes worth anything? Does it actually physically change anything? And if it does it change it for the better? Because changing things just for the sake of changing things is probably really not what we want. Do you have a job right now? Because I don't see you sleeping. I do! I have 2 jobs, but, you know, I could be a little bit more focused on them, but at the same time, I kinda don't want it. How would you currently describe the transparency of the admins? Do you think that improvement is needed, or do you think it's in an ideal state? This is something that I myself as a member used to bitch about a lot, you know, the transparency between the admin team and the community. But there are just some times where you're sitting there as an admin and going, do I want to tell this to people, or are they just going to use that excuse to just generate forum drama just for the sake of generating forum drama? Because hey, let's be completely honest with ourselves, drama is fun to watch. But when it involves specifically you, you know, there's things that we're doing, and there's things we're not doing, and sometimes not telling is just easier. regarding SRPs, I have noticed that there's some bias when it comes to people who wish to defect their ships. Can you clear this up? Does the admins have sort of reason not to like defections? We don't like SRPs when they become too samey, when everyone is starting defecting their ships just like one at a time. The biggest issue right now is watching players create ships with the sole intention to then defect them to other IDs. I personally never really understood this. Do you really think this makes you somehow unique? Does this make you, you know, your character a bit more fun to play? Especially when, as far as I can see, the overall community's perspective on defection roleplay is basically, oh, they're doing that thing again. You know, it's not really held in high regard, so why would you do that as well? But again, you know, we're just going to be processing it as any other, but needless to say, we're just looking at it and it's going like, oh, it's another fucking thing. It's another defection. Yeah, defecation roleplay. What do you think about the current state of official factions versus their indies? Besides FR5ing them, there's little that an official faction can do to indie members that are fucking up. Have you tried talking to them? Genuine question. I mean, we have to deal with people who are not, you know, prominent members of our community, or rather, you know, outside. We have to deal with this all the time. We have to talk to people. Why couldn't you? Alright peeps, it's been 1 hour of the live stream. I think we are going to start wrapping up here. Ask away your last few questions and we might as well call it a day now. What's your opinion on liberalizing the community by simplifying the rules and reducing the admin controls to the minimum necessary, like keeping the RP immersion in the game dealing with cheating? There is the biggest underlying issue with simplifying the rules is that you make them too vague and they pretty much lose their purpose. For example, the current rule regarding cheating pretty much lost all of its meaning because it doesn't specify that, say, ramming a capital ship is cheating, or that, hey, running the freelancer at a certain refresh rate is cheating. There are just rules in the game that cannot be condensed. You have to specifically point out every single you specifically need to specify everything about that rule because it is related to a very specific in-game encounter type or a in-game mechanic. And if you make it too vague, then it's pretty much it kills the purpose of the rule in the first place. Alright peeps, that was the last question it seems. Alright guys, thank you for joining with, you know, this day's stream. I'm pretty glad how it turned out, so maybe we're gonna do a couple of these later and maybe invite some of the other admin players online, you know, to join me in, you know, in a call for this. And, but yeah, thanks for joining us. Hopefully this was interesting. Hopefully the questions that got answered and the questions that got asked were interesting for you to, you know, to listen to me brag about. And, well, see you next time, I suppose.